Now here's another thrift store project I just picked up not too long ago. It's a nice little JVC stereo 50 watt per channel receiver from late 80s to early 90s. I first picked it up, plugged it in, and it seemed to work. And I bought this because I had bought, it's kind of a matched pair with a CD player, a 6-disc CD player that I picked up that's JVC's from the same vintage and has a wonderful sound. So I said, well, let me get this thing, because also it came with a remote. The remote actually works with the CD players, so I was happy to get that. When I first plugged this thing in, it seemed to work fine, except one side, the right side, took a second or two to come up, and then it played. And I played it for a couple hours. And eventually the right side went out. I only had audio on the left side. And then the left side went out and had no audio at all. So, yeah, it looks like it's got an intermittent problem. So one of the first things I like to do is check all the power supplies. And I didn't have a schematic for this thing, so I didn't even know where to look. And it's not really marked on the boards anyway, like it is with some of the modern equipment, what powers should be where. So I had to go and find a service manual, which I did. And here's a little excerpt from it. And right about there is the main power inputs that go to the source selection board that selects all the inputs back here. There they are. And selects what to go to the power amp board. The power amp board seems okay. I measured the output stages and they seem to be fine. So well, let's take a look at the power supplies and see what we've got. Okay, I got the bottom off of this thing, and it pictured right there is the source selection board. There's all the inputs coming in, and it goes to this board, and that's where the whole process gets started. So right there, if you've noticed, see if I can point to it. See if I can get my camera on it. Right here. Here's where all the inputs come in from the power supply board. So, and what we should have is right there. So we should have 5 volts, 14.6, 0 ground, minus 15 and plus 15 on that P301. So let's go ahead and power this thing up and see what we get. Okay, heard the relay click. So I'm on pin 1, or actually I'm on pin 5. Now let's start down here, pin 1 first. Okay, so we should have pin 1 5.5 volts. We got 5.2. Not too bad. Oops, pin 2. Looks like we should have 14.6. And we got 14.6 roughly. Apologize if this is making you seasick here. It's kind of moving around a lot. Okay, pin 3 looks like a ground, 0 volts. Excellent. That's what we've got. Okay, so on to pin 4. And pin 4 says minus 15.6. Oops! Looks like we've got nothing. So that seems to be a problem. Go ahead and check this last one out here. That's pin 5, 15.6, positive 15.6 volts, and that's what we've got. So it looks like our negative 15 volts is missing. So I'll try to track that down, and that would certainly cause an issue with this board. So let's find out what happened. Here's a little nasty little thing. You see all that blackness right there? That's actually where all these powers are generated. So I'm suspecting maybe we got a bad resistor or a bad contact or something in that area. but we'll start probing around, see if we can find it. So this is the schematic of the power supply board, which is on the main amplifier board. And you can see we got this B plus and B minus. That's what they're calling the plus and minus 15 volts. So if we follow the B minus or the minus 15, which is the one we're missing, it goes back to this Q805 transistor or regulator or whatever that is. So now let's take a look at that. Go ahead and power on here. Okay, so Q805. Well, there's the base, and that should have some voltage on it, and it doesn't. And that's the collector or output. You can see it's got Zippo on it, and according to the schematic it should have like minus 21 volts. And there's the other pin, got zip also, and it should have minus 15. I think that's our output. So that regulator's not getting anything. That's being fed by 806, resistor 806, and it should have, you know, like B minus on it, 22 volts on one side and 21.8 or so on the other side. So let's go find that guy. And you know, I've actually been probing around, so I know what's wrong with it. There's that Q806 resistor right there. That little crusty one. It is R806. So it goes between this connection right here, which is our minus 24 volts, and on the other side of it right here, get the glare off, Zippo, nothing. So let's flip it over and see what that looks like on the other side. Of course, it's close to that black side, so you know it's generating a lot of heat right there. And there's our little 806 resistor right down in there. It's kind of hard to see, you know, but if I can get the light just right, you can see it doesn't look like the one next to it. It looks a little brown. Looks like it has been toasted. So I think that's the one that we're going to have to replace to get this thing working again. So I'll go ahead and pull it out and measure it up and see what it's reads. Alright, here's our crusty looking resistor we just pulled out. It's supposed to be a 47 ohm. Let's see what we get here. Let's see, is this working? Yeah, there's 0.2 ohms. And we're getting nothing. That's perfect insulator. I can get on it here. No, not getting anything on it. So that's a 1/4 watt carbon 47 ohm. I've got some half waters here, and they're reading 47 ohms, so I think I'll put one of these in and see what happens. Well, I put the new resistor in and powered the unit on to see what would happen, and I immediately smelled and saw some smoke. And you can see the big black spot right in the middle of that new resistor right there. So that guy we let the smoke out of that one. So apparently it wasn't the resistor. So what I'm thinking it might be is that regulator right there is probably, that's being fed by that R806 47 ohm resistor, is probably shorted. And I'm not sure what the current path would be, but it's certainly drawing a lot of current. So I may pull that out or do some measurements on it and see what's happening with that. Well, I solved the minus 15 volt power supply issue, but it's a bit of a self-inflicted problem here. should back up. When I first got this thing, it actually worked. I plugged it in and played it for a couple hours. Worked great. Then I noticed one side, the right side, went out on one input, and I moved it around, and then the other input seemed to be working, and eventually all the inputs on the right side went bad, but I still had the left side. So I suspected, well, maybe I got bad connections here. So this is the little cable that goes from the source select board over the power amplifier board. So I tried, disconnecting that and remating it. And this is the connector right here that supplies all the voltages to this board. So I tried disconnecting that and reconnecting it. And that didn't fix anything. In fact, it went from one channel working to no channels working. So I noticed here on the schematic when I finally got it that it has plus 5 volts, plus 12 volts ground, and then a minus, B minus and a B plus. B minus is the minus 15. You notice that they're right next to each other. So if you're a little careless when you plug this back in and you get it off by one wire, one position, you'll end up shorting that B minus or minus 15 volts to ground. And that causes resistors to smoke. So that was the issue. Finally, tracing the circuit back, I discovered that I had done that. So I corrected that, put a new resistor in, and the minus 15 is working again. All is well so far, except the system, the amplifier still doesn't work. Not getting any input through the select board here. So right now what I've done is provided an input here on these inputs, which goes up here to this source select chip, which is that little chip right there. And this has kind of two parts, a front part and a back part. So I'm getting signal going on the input here and then coming back out here. And it goes back into the back side of this chip and then gets outputted and then goes off to the rest of the amplifier. I'm not getting anything on the output of that. Even though this is working, I'm getting inputs and outputs, and it's switching properly from tape to aux and everything else. So I suspect the back half of this chip seems to have gone bad. So that's the guy right there. I've ordered a new one. It's only $5 or $6, shipping included. Should get here in a few days. So that's my next step. I'll pop that chip out and see if that makes it work any better. Well, here is the old chip that I pulled out. This is the source selection integrated circuit. I was suspecting half of it was bad. And there's the new one soldered in. That's the back side of it. When I pulled out the original one, I lifted a trace up there where that little wire is right there. I thought the trace was okay, but when I fired the unit up, I found out that the chip wasn't working at all. It wasn't doing any of its switching. So I was a little disappointed until I remembered that I had lifted that trace. So I went and did a continuity check and found out that I had broken the trace, not just lifted it up. So I had to install a little wire right there, which that's the clock signal going to that chip. So since it wasn't receiving any clock, it couldn't do any switching, and no source selection was going on. So after putting that wire in, that seemed to fix it, and right now everything seems to be working properly. So I'm going to put the base back on that and the top, and take it upstairs and plug some speakers into it and see if it works. Well, as you can hear, it's got speakers hooked up to it and it seems to be working. This is actually the matched JVC CD player down here that I got first, and then wanted to get the receiver to go along with it. Everything seems to be working fine, so hopefully that one chip swap out was the problem. And once again, there's another $15 receiver from the local thrift store with about $6 or $7 worth of parts, and seems to be up and running again. Got real nice sound. Late 80s vintage. Yeah, it works a little different than a modern one, but sounds real good. So that's it for this repair. Hopefully I'll get another project soon. Well, the JVC receiver is back down in the basement. It was working for a while, but you can see it's got its hood off again. I thought that one chip replacement might be too good to be true. You know, when the thing was failing, it just didn't seem like it was a chip. The way it was kind of going on and off, the sound would kind of fade and come in and out. It felt more contacty than, you know, an IC. So even when it was working and I was listening to it for a couple hours that it played, I kept thinking maybe it's that speaker relay right there, which is, you know, right here in the circuit. You can see it's you know, driven by this protection integrated circuit, which senses, you know, a number of different things in the amplifier, and if something goes wrong, tells that relay to open up, which cuts off the speakers so that you know, the amplifier doesn't blow up your speakers. So you can see this has a right side and a left side. So, you know, I'm only losing one side of the audio. So when this failed again, I was able to bring it back down, put a tone in, and get on the back side of that board and check that relay, and I could definitely see the signal going in and out on one side, but only in on the other side, and then just kind of dying there. So that's got some bad contacts in it. I have ordered the new part. It's an original JVC part, which is kind of pricey. It's about 20 bucks. But, you know, for an old receiver like this, it gets to be, you know, if I was really working on this for somebody that was paying for it, you know, they may not want to put that much money into a, you know, 20, 30-year-old receiver. But I thought I want to get it fixed anyway, so I'll go ahead and pop for it. So it's on order, and I'll pull that one out and put the new one in when it gets here, hopefully fix it. I don't know if you can see down in there, but I actually kind of drilled a hole in the top of that plastic and shot some deoxit in it just to try to clean it up, but it didn't work. So it must have some pretty badly burned contacts in there, but they're kind of still intermittent. So that's the guy right there. So more to come, and hopefully this will be the last part I have to replace. Well, got the parts for the JVC receiver. Little speaker relay. I decided to buy a cheap $10 shipping included relay versus the more expensive one that was originally in there. I think they all pretty much do the same thing. So anyway, that's the part, and right down there is where it goes. So I've got the soldering iron all heated up. We go ahead and flip this over and get this soldered in place and see if that fixes the issue.
Now I gotta make my rounds. Where can I lay you down? I'm gonna miss your love tonight. You know I really love your sound.
Well, the JVC receiver seems to be finally working now. I played it for a few hours and off and on, and looks like all of the right speaker fading is finally repaired. So I'll update the video, and hopefully that'll be the end of working on this one.